For those of you that don't know me or about my history, I'm a mechanical engineer. I originally started off in the oil and gas industry. Quit my job quite a while ago now, and you're probably wondering why I quit my job in the oil and gas industry. We're making all sorts of money, and I actually kind of liked my job. It was fast-paced and exciting, but I felt that I don't know, things started coming up for me on the surface. I started, or maybe below the surface, I started recognizing that status quo probably wasn't a good idea, and probably a lot of you are here for that reason. And I was hearing about a lot of problems, but not many solutions. And so both my wife and I quit our jobs and we traveled the world. We traveled for a long time. In fact, we're kind of still traveling. And we traveled specifically to try and find solutions and how other cultures were dealing with similar issues. And what we noticed was that the story that we're being told right now about how we can't transition to another energy source, or there's not enough land to feed the world, or we have overpopulation issues, or that climate change isn't reversible, all of these things I like to refer to as myths or mythology. We all learned about myth in school, but it was always in the context of Roman myth or Greek myth, but we're actually still fundamentally running on the same type of operating system. It's just called a different name. And these myths actually do more to direct culture than anything else around us. So it's not a technological barrier. It's not a knowledge barrier. It's a myth barrier, and whoever controls our story actually controls the direction of society. So for the last 5 years, I've been running Verge Permaculture, which is how you guys heard about this. We've just launched a new business called Adaptive Habitat, which is going to specialize in resilient homes, farms, and acreages. And the two companies kind of work in different areas. So Verge Permaculture is very much education-based, and so the Permaculture Design course, which has kind of been our flagship course for the last 5 years, teaches people how to create resilient livelihoods, but also to set their lives up to be resilient as well. And Adaptive Habitat is more of the service end of our offering, essentially, where we are going to be doing it for people, essentially. We're going to take their problems away and give them back resilient homes, farms, or acreages. So that's a little bit about me. Tonight, I want to kind of talk about specifically how to set up one of these resilient homes or farmsteads, and the types of things you need to be thinking about, the pitfalls or mistakes that might be made. And it doesn't really matter if this is in a city or if it's out in a rural area. The principles are going to remain somewhat the same. And believe it or not, I mean, I actually have been consulting for quite a while in this area for at least the last 5 years. Actually, you could even argue 8, because I was moonlighting in the renewable energy industry before that. And I've written a number of blogs on this, one of which is how to avoid the tears. So buying the right property, how to avoid the tears. I have this tendency of making my clients cry, not because I enjoy that, but because some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight isn't done properly right from the beginning. And I have another blog, because I just kept noticing this over and over again, that people use land as a way of creating enduring wealth to transition from generation to generation. So I really feel like there's a lot of pressure right now out there to invest in gold and silver, but I think there are different forms of enduring wealth that we can invest in that help buttress us, help buttress our finances, and feed us and shelter us. And I really feel like if we can always look to the really rich people in the world sometimes for leadership, and there's a lot of emphasis right now being put into these types of homes, farms, and acreages to create that type of enduring wealth. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that tonight. So one of the reasons I quit my job, and I'm doing this now, is that I started to ask the question, how do we make decisions about the future? And most of the time, when we make decisions about the future, we look to the past for information. But if you start looking at very core metrics within our economy, within the environment, within society, it's pretty clear that we're getting issues in all of those three areas. So whether it's massive amounts of debt, either personal or government, wonky climate, you name it. I'm sure we could talk about this all night, all the things that are kind of going off the scale right now. And so I think it's pretty safe to say that the next 20 years are going to be quite a bit different than the last 20 years. And it instantly brings up, for a lot of people, I mean, that's why there's so much stuff on the internet about this right now, it instantly brings up a lot of panic and fear. And I actually think we can approach the next 20 years with an enormous amount of confidence. I think we're actually living one of the most exciting times on the planet in the history of the human species, because it's these tumultuous times that actually gives us opportunities to create leadership, or for leadership to rise to the surface and to redirect society. See, when these times typically come, it's always the extremists that are ready. It's never the moderates, and I would call most of you guys moderates in this room. And so I see this as an opportunity to start redirecting the course of society. So I would actually say that people who make predictions about the future, on the most part, are doing so out of fear and are probably mostly charlatans. If you're reading people who are making predictions about when something's going to collapse or what might come out of some situation, it's very hard to make a prediction, because we're talking about the most hyper-complex system that you could ever imagine. So you're dealing with a species as big as the human race, a planet which we don't really even understand, mostly so, and then you put that together with an economy and all of the other forces that kind of run that system, and you can't really make a prediction, because no matter how many predictions you make, they'll always be wrong, because only one can possibly happen. So the chance that you will actually make a correct prediction, I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed all the books coming out, all these YouTube videos saying so-and-so expert predicted this thing happening after the fact. Well, hindsight is 20/20, and whenever you have things getting a little bit more serious, and we look back on things like 2008, these types of predictions, people come out and say all the time, it's very easy for people to look into the past and say, well, of course that had to happen. It makes total sense looking from our position right now that it had to happen that way. But the best that you can actually do, if you look at things from a systems theory, is that you can take any complex or hyper-complex system and you can break it down into three possible properties, if you will. So every system we look at can either be classified as fragile, so think about a glass, you drop it, it breaks, or resilient, okay? So you guys probably have, there's a lot of use of the word resilient right now. People are coming out with, finding all sorts of unique ways to use the word resilient. But resilient really just means that it resists breaking. So if you think about Calgary in the flood a couple years ago, you could argue that parts of Calgary were really fragile, but a lot of parts of Calgary were actually quite resilient. The thing that was interesting to watch with regards to Calgary, because we had cheap fossil fuel, is the anti-fragile component was actually people, community. So anti-fragile systems benefit from chaos. Okay, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Sometimes if you don't understand a concept, it's easier to think about your own body and how it relates to that. So this is a hyper-complex biological system. Tons of stuff going on here all the time. And the way this system actually functions, our bodies are actually anti-fragile. So when you go to the gym and you lift weights, depending on the quantity of weight, of course, you've got to get the dosage right. But if you get the dosage right, when we're lifting weight, we actually create little tiny micro tears in our muscles. Okay, those micro tears actually repair and make you stronger. So an anti-fragile system actually benefits from disorder or chaos. So what we're trying to do is, and what permaculture aims to do, and what we're trying to do in this new consulting enterprise is to help people create anti-fragile systems, specifically around the systems that buttress your life. Okay, so we can look at the food system right now. How would you guys classify the food system if we had to rate it in terms of fragile, resilient, or anti-fragile? Yeah, it's probably resilient to fragile, depending on where you look, where you live, and what you're eating. So if you're eating food from very local sources, from people that you can shake their hand with, or even out of your own garden, well, you have a pretty anti-fragile or resilient food system. If you're relying on food from California or Mexico, which is in one of the largest droughts we've ever seen, I would argue that that's a fairly fragile system right now. So we can look at our house, we can run it through that metric. We can look at our community, we can run it through that metric. We can look at our energy supply, we can run it through that metric as well. And so instead of trying to make predictions about how certain events are going to unfold, how the food system might collapse or struggle, or how the energy system might collapse or struggle, what we can do is rate all those systems that are crucial to our own personal resilience or anti-fragility, and we can start to make investing decisions, or decisions with, it doesn't have to be investment decisions, it can just be decisions about where we invest our time even, to create opportunities in our lives that benefit from chaos. And when you start surrounding yourself in what I call anti-fragile decisions, all of a sudden, all of that fear and anxiety that exists from being within a fragile system starts to disappear. It's not about having all the solar panels or having all of the gardens. It's about looking at all of the systems and making sure that they benefit from chaos as opposed to self-destructing in disorder. Because the only consistent thing that we can actually say exists on this planet is actually chaos. I mean, if we look at the last 4.2 billion years on the planet, chaos is the norm. We've just been living in a specific period of time where things have been relatively stable, and we've come to rely on that. And I would argue as an engineer that we've created a lot of this expectation of false stability around us. And a lot of that false stability comes from cheap fossil fuels. And it doesn't really matter when fossil fuels run out or when they become really expensive again. It's inevitable. It's a finite resource. And so whether you're making decisions in your life about your generation or yourself right now or future generations or the direction of society, I would argue those are all really important things to think about when you're starting to make decisions. So there's really only two possible responses. Either business as usual, so keep dancing as long as there's music, and hope that you can get onto a seat before the music ends, whether it's in your lifetime or not, or to start changing the way that we live our life. And this is fundamentally one of the things that we uncovered while we were traveling around the world, is this mythology that at best humans can only be net neutral, okay? Most of the time, though, that message is humans are inherently destructive. We are a dearth on this planet. So we destroy everything in our wake. We take things down. We use fossil fuel. We disperse it into the atmosphere. I mean, like, we could talk about that all night. But there's plenty of anthropological evidence that we can be just as positive as we are negative. And so that's another good reason to start changing our direction and start voting with our dollars, start putting our money where our mouth is, and start buttressing our lives in ways that actually do provide a return on investment, but also create a lot of internal security. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here right away. So there's really, if I was you guys and I was getting into an off-grid farmstead or home or acreage, whether it's urban or rural, there's really three things that I would ask if I was kind of in the know. And these are the three things that most people don't ask about. So we're going to talk about those three questions tonight. So the first question is, what's the most important thing to do first? Okay, it's probably not what you think. The second most important thing is, what's are the most important things to think about when purchasing land? Okay. And then what are some of the most important things to think about in terms of your house? Most of us, when we buy a property or we want to try and achieve these types of goals, go straight to the home. And we have this expectation of how the home has to look. And I would actually argue that it's the last thing that we need to think about. And within the home, how your home looks is actually the last thing, the very, very last thing that we need to look about. Now, I'm not talking about a future where engineers design the world and everything looks cubical and ugly. I think aesthetics are very important in the way that we go about doing design. But I think that we can fit aesthetic into a larger framework, specifically with regard to creating a future where resilience or anti-fragility is a fundamental building block in how we build everything. And then all of these issues that we're concerned about will just slowly start to disappear. Unfortunately, our whole society is built on sand, essentially, and that sand is, when it starts to get uneven, things start to fall apart. But we can turn that all around.